Hello and welcome to everyone listening to the Written in Melanin podcast, the place where you come to get your weekly dose of melanated creativity. I'm your host, CM Lockhart, an author of fantasy books featuring Black girls who aren't all that nice, and the owner of the Melanin Library, an online database of books written by Black authors. And in this space, I invite you to listen to the journeys of Black authors with the hope that you'll gain something from it. I'm glad that you're here. And today, you guys, I'm so excited because I'm here with Ravynn K. Stringfield. She is a former academic and young adult author, originally from Suffolk, Virginia. Her titles include Love Requires Chocolate and the recent digital epistolary novel, I say that word wrong every single time, Love in 280 Characters or Less. Ravynn holds a PhD in American Studies from William and Mary, and her creative nonfiction has appeared in publications such as Shondaland, Zora, and Catapult Magazine. She can often be found haunting coffee shops in search of the perfect hazelnut latte, knee-deep in art supplies, or telling anyone who will listen about her Lois Lane obsession. And she's on the podcast. I'm so glad that she is here. Welcome, Ravynn.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, before we get into this, little context for anyone listening to the podcast, I, first of all, love Ravynn's book, Love in 280 Characters or Less. So, this is not an unbiased production of promotion of the podcast. Go buy the book. Thank you. And also, Ravynn and I have met in person at Resist Booksellers. So, that is a Black owned bookstore up in Petersburg, Virginia. So, if you're in the Richmond, Petersburg area, go check it out. We support it. That is the official, unofficial bookstore of the Written in Melanin podcast, so get into it. That being said, Ravynn, thank you for being here. And for those of the listeners and viewers on YouTube who are just now meeting you for the first time, please introduce yourself. Tell them a little bit about who you are and your books.
Of course. So my name's Ravynn. I am a writer based in Virginia. I'm originally from Virginia, born and raised, totally educated in Virginia public schools. So like that tends to be a thing that I talk about a lot. And Virginia is something that is very important to my books so far, Virginia and the outskirts. So I like to write books about Black girls that are messy and are dealing with honestly just the messiness of life. And I also appreciate an honesty and candor to my characters. So if you're looking for a story where someone gets to feel big feelings and be very honest about them, then I think my books are going to be the place for you.
Absolutely. So before we get into this, because I have so many questions that I want to ask you, but I feel like we should definitely start with Love in 280 Characters or Less, because that is the book that came out this year.
Yes.
That is the book that kind of brought our worlds colliding.
Great.
And I just want more people to know about it, because in case you guys are listening to this, if you haven't seen it, if you go to the Melanin Library YouTube channel, there is a review where I share all of my thoughts about 280 Characters or Less. And long story short is I think that it's great. I think it's unique in the way it's presented, but also I love the way that you wrote Sid and her world, and it is very much the book about the college experience that I think more people need to read and get into, especially since we are in an era of so many young adult characters are, in college or college adjacent. So can you tell us a little bit about it, and like what was your inspiration for how the journey for that book kind of kicked off for you?
Yeah, I would love to tell you about it. So, Love in 280 Characters or Less is an epistolary story about a Black girl's first semester at a predominantly white institution college in Virginia. It's a fictional college. And when I say epistolary, I mean that it's told entirely in text messages, blog posts, emails, things like that, sort of like the short form digital messages. So, and I think there is a kind of overarching romance that runs through the story that I think propels the narrative a lot, but in many ways it is a very typical coming of age story where you've dropped this character into a new space and you're watching her try to navigate it, and you're watching her try to build community and relationships and things from scratch. So what I did with the story, or when I thought about it, I originally wrote this story in 2019. And so I was a few years out from having graduated from college. And I will say that I went to the University of Virginia, and I had I mean, most of us did actually struggle at UVA, whether or not we talked about it or not. I think everyone kind of had different issues, but I really struggled at UVA. And it was the kind of thing that I like it was almost inexplicable the ways that I struggled. I wasn't expecting it because it wasn't the rigor of the classes at all. It was more about the culture and the way that I was being treated and handled as like a black person. And it felt very like it was just I couldn't believe some of the things that were happening to me and things would continue on as normal at school. And so a few years out from that whole experience, I was still kind of processing what I had been through during those 4 years. And then after I left UVA, I went to another predominantly white institution in Virginia for grad school. But at that point, I'm working as a graduate assistant, I'm working as a professor. So I'm working with other young Black women who are coming to me and telling me stories that affirm a lot of the things that I thought had just happened to me, or the way that I was experiencing college was very unique to me, and I was realizing this is a structural issue with the way that predominantly white institutions work and like how we're expected to be and behave in these spaces. And so I wrote to a 280 the summer of 2019. And at the time, had gotten really into blogging. Like I'd been blogging for probably 5 years at that point. And something told me, or like I thought to myself, wouldn't it be so cool to write a book that's almost entirely blog posts about kind of like the college experience? And so I don't know if you ever read Lauren Miracle's Internet Girl books from like way back in the mid aughts.
I saw them and I flipped through them, but they were never like on my bookshelf personally. But I'm familiar with them.
I loved them. I loved them. I'm a big internet girly. Like I'm chronically online. Like I have a friend who like really hates talking to me sometimes because I like almost exclusively talk in internet memes. And so, it's that sort of energy. I knew the book that I wanted to write, there was a precedent for it. And so I said to myself, it can't be impossible to do an internet book, right? And so it came together, the first draft of it came together really quickly. And to be honest with you, I thought that I was going to submit it as a partial requirement for my dissertation. Like I thought I was going to give the book and let that be like a creative dissertation project and then have kind of the research aspect added to it. But when I gave it to my advisor, she was like, I think you might want to go try to find an agent. And then like didn't give me any other advice on it. I was
like go off into the world, figure this out on your own. You've got this.
Yeah, but like I really appreciate her for doing that. My advisor she was a little different because she also had an MFA. So she also came from the kind of literary narrative world in addition to having the research orientation. So the fact that she even was like with an MFA and with a knowledge of how kind of like traditional publishing works was acknowledging that this had some sort of sellability or commercial appeal meant a lot to me at the time.
I mean, I love that because one of the things that I do talk about a lot on the podcast, and I know if people who listen to the podcast regularly are tired of hearing me say this, but it's like having community and people in your corner who really believe in you. And a part of that community is having mentors and people who see you and people who are going to be honest with you. And especially when it's like, hey, this is too good to give away. And I feel like that is a really special type of moment to have with someone because I know that I've experienced that myself with The Lady Widow. I was going to submit it for an anthology and my friends read it and they were like, this is good, but I would argue that you should keep this for yourself and do something with it and write something else for the anthology if you still want to submit to it. And I'm really glad that I listened to them because that was solid advice. But there's something really special about someone reading your work and understanding you as a person and being like, this is something bigger than what you yourself are seeing it as. So I'm really glad that you had that that person in your life, but there are so many things that you touched on that I feel like we could have whole conversations about, because I very much come from like a family of HBCU graduates. Like everyone in my family has gone to an HBCU of some sort, right? And so when you were talking about that, and also with Sid's story of her being at a PWI, it was very interesting for me kind of seeing what that experience is like and kind of experiencing that through her, because it's just like, oh, this is the challenges. And there are so many, for me, like similarities, but also things that were like, I was like, wow, that, I guess that is completely different. And it was all these things that I had heard about, because from my perspective and like my upbringing, right, I was always told about HBCUs, which, if you're listening to this, to be clear, HBCU stands for Historically Black College and University, or university and or whatever. And PWI stands for Predominantly White Institution. And obviously those are diametrically opposed in a lot of ways, right? But reading Sid at this, fictional university, it was just kind of like, yeah, there's still so many similarities. She's still a freshman. She's still like brand new world, like friends, roommates, trying to figure out the campus. There are so many commonalities, but then there are so many other things where it's just like, oh, you are still in a sense, kind of the other in this space, and you have to navigate that appropriately. So kind of hearing that you pull from your own experience is just kind of like, there is, and to be clear, there is no HBCU PWI war. Go to whatever school, university works best for you and what you are trying to do. But it was just something that really kind of, I guess, brought perspective to me, because I had never even thought about it like that before, So, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, like my mom's an HBCU grad, and my dad also went to the University of Virginia. And I think part of why I was so drawn to this, yes, I was kind of tapping my own experience, but my dad also had a really hard time at UVA as well. And like, because I know his story and the story of his classmates, I know that the kind of institutional issues with attending a PWI are in fact like really long standing. And it's the kind of thing like, so when I was at UVA, and this is a kind of a tangent, so I can get back on track in a second, but we would have these meetings with the Office of African American Affairs at the beginning of the semester. And one of the deans would show us at the beginning of the year statistics of the retention rates that we have had over at the university over the so many years, and would go back to like for a long way. So I could almost see the statistics for when my dad was in school, and the retention rate was really, really low. And the thing that I think about often is they show us those numbers, but oftentimes we don't actually talk about what happens to people who do fall through the cracks, who do become a statistic in those graphs. And so I think that was also another reason I had to write about this particular experience, because I do think that, Sid does well, but a lot of times the kids can fall through the cracks really quick.
Oh yeah, because I can imagine that in the book without, oh, her mentor, the
And yeah.
Zion. So if you are listening to this and you haven't read the book, this story is very much coming of age, very much like coming into yourself type story for, I would say, that second puberty, when you're in like you're 18, 19, and you're trying to go from teenager to adult, right? And Sid is awkward. She's just awkward. There's no other way to say that. And as she's trying to figure things out, she's very fortunate to have found a mentor in one of her graduate assistants, or TAs, teacher's assistants, whichever you're familiar with. And, and her name is Zion, and she's very instrumental in helping Sid from going off the rails. And it was just so nice to have that voice of reason in the book. And it's just like, yes, someone to tell this girl that she needs to calm down. Maybe she needs to go over here to this yoga class, this meditation. Maybe she needs to get offline, right? And it's just knowing that, it's just like, that is an experience that I think no matter where you go, at wherever you're at, everybody kind of needs that. And I'm so glad that Sid had it in the book. And I completely forgot where I was going. I just need to give you your flowers for including Zion in it, because she needed it. And I feel like we all need Zion in our life. And I think when we were at Resist, you kind of talked about how you ended up being a Zion in your own career when you were working as a graduate assistant, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, because I definitely didn't have a Zion. Like that's part of why I feel like I struggled at UVA so much. There were two really wonderful elder Black women who definitely took me under their wing, but they worked in the admission office. So, I only had support Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, if I happened to be like in the admission office, which is where I was most of the time. But outside of that, I was definitely fending for myself. And so I think as I after I basically survived, I kind of made it my mission that no one, as long as they had me, would have to struggle in the way that I did. Like I was planning to be there as best as I could. And I know that really came to a head at my last job. I was a media studies professor for a couple of years at another Virginia institution. When I tell y'all I like am so Virginian. This is my claim to fame. This is my brand. But but the students there really clung to me. One of my students called me her emotional support professor, and she was very serious about
Oh
it.
no, for
So,
real. Because I can see that, because the thing that I do like though is the something that you touched on is that like wherever you end up, you are still going, even if it's not a Zion, even if it's not someone as wonderfully made as she is, right? It is still someone who's there for you, who sees you, who's like, you know what? I may not be here all the time, but I got your back. I'm going to support you. And it's so important to have those people where you can be like, hey, I am overwhelmed. Can you, and even if you can't help me, can you hear me out and tell me that it's going to be okay? And that is something that I know, at least for me in my experience, right? Hearing that from someone who is at the school, who understands intimately what it is that you are dealing with versus it coming from, outside, your family, your friends, they are well meaning, but it's just like, but you're not here. You're
right.
not going to these classes. You don't understand that I've got 3 papers, a project, and a presentation to put together. And I'm stuck in this group project with someone who's not doing any work. And I cannot get these people to meet up for the life of me,
Right.
you know?
Hmm.
So I'm glad that you were able to become that person and that they have you, because that, like you said, those retention rates, that makes all the world when you feel like someone sees you, hears you, supports you, cares about you, and they want to actually see you succeed. And it's not something they're like, I want to see everyone succeed. It's like, no, you as an individual, I want to see you make it through to the other side of this. That's
Hmm.
impactful.
Yep.
So that being said, I feel like we got to reroute this conversation just a little bit, because college is in and of itself a very impactful time space for everyone in real life, but also
Mhm.
especially with Sid, it's a setting that I think was perfectly set for her and her
Mhm.
journey and where she was at. And before I get into my question, I also want to give you your flowers, because one of the things that is a personal pet peeve for me as an individual whenever I read YA books, especially when it is older protagonists, is that their parents are just not involved. And what I enjoyed about yours book is that Sid's family was still very much present in her life, and not just her parents, but like her best friend and his parents. Like it was
Mhm.
a genuine community. Like they didn't just fall off the face of the earth simply because she went to college. She was definitely on her own in some ways, but she was never completely alone. She still had her sister, she still had her family, and they were checking on her like they do when you're a freshman in college. They don't just be
Mhm.
like, okay, well, get off into the universe. You got
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
So I just want to give you your flowers for including that. And if you guys are listening to this podcast, y'all should know that everything about this book was really done with care, and it was done in such a way that you really believe that Sid could be somewhere on a college campus somewhere, even now, getting ready for her second semester, getting ready to go into her junior year. Like, girl, I wonder if she's doing okay. Did she ever get offline? Is she all right? Trying to
Oh,
check her tweets on Twitter. Like, she really feels like she was a living, breathing character, and the setting
oh,
was wonderfully done.
Oh,
But
thank you.
that being said, of course, I want to give people their flowers when they're deserving. And I actually read the book. And if y'all listen to the podcast, y'all know I don't really be reading the books. So I read this one and I enjoyed it. And I sent it to La. If you guys are on the channel, y'all know who that is. But yeah, we have a little sisterhood of the traveling books going on. So waiting for her to get it and send it to our friend Tatiana. And then I'll have this nice little book with all of our notes and stuff. And it'll be
Oh,
cute. It'll be fun. But on topic, the what I wanted to talk to you specifically about is because your book is traditionally published, and one
right.
of the conversations in 2025, specifically June, July of 2025, right, is this idea that young adult books have been aging up over the years because there used to be a time where all the characters were like 14, 15, 16, and they were like high school, right? And
Mhm.
now we're into this era where a lot of the characters are like 17, 18, 19, and they're like Sid, they're in their freshman year of college, or getting ready to go to college, or for on a college campus for various reasons, right? I wanted to know, like, what is your take on that, being in the space and kind of seeing it, witnessing it, right? And then also, how do you feel about new adult and the kind of the blossoming of this new age range slash genre that's coming about?
Yeah, I definitely can see how the industry is skewing older for YA. I think it's really hard to sell a YA with a 14-year-old protagonist, even though that's technically still YA. But at the same time, it's still difficult to sell college books. Like it's still not, I would say, standard practice to sell a book with an 18-year-old protagonist that's in college. And have it be YA. That's still not super popular at the time at the moment. So I mean, I that was one of the things that I kind of got a lot of rejections on when I was on submission. And I was on submission, by the way, with this book for a very long time, and one of the things that I
Mm.
kind of consistently got was, we don't know if we want to sell a college book. Like we don't, like we don't know if we want to do that. And so there have been a couple of books I can think of off the top of my head, like Study Break by, I don't want to give you the last name, but Study Break is one book that came out that's also with my imprint. And also, let's see, Dear Wendy. Dear Wendy also came
Mhm.
out recently, which is a YA college. But I think, to be honest with you, I struggle with all of the labeling and the categorization and all of that kind of stuff. So you asked about how I feel about new adult. S Maybe this is very kind of stereotypical artist or like stereotypical art writer of me, but in some
Oh
ways I
goodness.
kind of, yeah, but like sometimes I'm like, is that really my problem? Like what y'all want to call this? Like I just want to like that feels like a problem for my agent and my editor. Like for you, like I'm supposed to write the thing and y'all are supposed to tell me what to do with it. Like I mean, like, and that's what I'm doing right now. Like, one of the reasons why I won't let my agent talk about a project I've been working on for like years is because I'm like, I have to write the thing first so then I can give it to you and you can tell me how we're going to sell it. Because I don't know what this is. Like, I don't know. It's like not neatly in any of the genres or anything like that. And I will tell you with absolute, like this is a consistent thing for me with my writing and the way that I operate and move in the world. That was true about me in academia, that is true about me in publishing, which is that I simply just do not like to land neatly in a genre or like neatly in an age. Like I just don't do it well. I don't know what that is about me as a person, but it makes it, I really enjoy the stuff that I write, but I hate trying to figure out what it's supposed to be, like where it's going to go on the bookshelf and stuff like that. Like, and I won't say it that way because I do actually enjoy thinking about who my book is talking to in terms of other books that are like my book, but not necessarily the marketing of it all. So I think we could definitely use a new adult category if it means we're going to have access to more types of stories that otherwise get passed over because they don't land neatly in one category or the other. So I'm a big proponent of anything that's going to open the field up. But as far as my own work, I'm like, I really don't, I prefer not to have to think about such things.
No, that's valid. That's valid. I'm always curious because I talk to a lot of authors, but most of the authors that I talk to are like very firmly, neatly into one category or the other. And so, your book very much is on the cusp because I would think it's technically classified as a young adult book, but like we said, Sid is 18, she's in college. So that could have very easily have skewed the other way, depending on, I guess who was in conversation when those decisions were being made, right? And since young adult, like you said, is skewing older, it kind of does. I love that we are getting older protagonists because it's just like going to college and figuring yourself out. And like I said, kind of having that second puberty of going from, teenager to adult is a very real thing and a very real experience. So personally, I'm glad to see it. Right. But also, I feel like that kind of leaves the kids who are younger, who are like no too old for the stories in middle grade that are featuring 11 and 12-year-olds, but are not quite at that college age. There's creating this gap where it's just like, okay, but what's for them in this age range that is supposed to primarily be for them, that a lot of us who are writing these books, we like a lot of our formative reading happened in those YA books that were
Right.
14, 15, 16. And so I'm always curious of what the perspective is from people who exist in that space, in that world, in that genre. But like you said, it's very hard to land neatly in a box. And what I find interesting from my experience, talking to different authors, exclusively Black authors to a certain extent, right, is that whether we are indie or trad, we all tend to be like, I know who I'm writing the story for. And if it doesn't land neatly in these boxes, and it's not going to land neatly in these boxes, but I'm writing it specifically for this person, this audience, and it's a little bit of this book, it's a little bit of that book, and it is something wholly and uniquely its own thing. And one of the things that I love really about reading books by Black authors and talking to them is that, we really are not a color by the numbers type of group of people. It's very much like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It looks beautiful when it's all together, but if you give a group of people something, all of them are going to come up with something wildly different. And I'm here for it. I'm so here for it because even being like, hey, I'm going to write an epistolary, how you say it, Raven?
Epistolary.
Epistolary. There you go. I'm going to write an epistolary novel of this girl's first freshman year. And, the thing, I don't know, it's just the way the brain works. I'm just like, I love it. I love it. I'm here for it because it was so enjoyable because your book, Sid is on Twitter and she's on Twitter. She's not on X. She's on Twitter. And it was just something so comforting and nostalgic about that. And seeing the way her community interacted with her, it was just like, wow, we really had something at one point.
It's one of those things where when, we didn't intentionally put dates in the book, but if you read it, it is such a 2018, 2019 era book. Like it doesn't, and so in some ways it's hard because it became kind of a Frankenstein's monster because like I said, I wrote it originally in 2019. It doesn't come out until 2025, which means that there's 6 years of editing and 6 years of technological advance and social media advances that happen in that time. So by the time we actually get it, nothing that she's doing is still relevant anymore. And in some ways I wish I do almost wish I had kept the original dates and just let it be almost like a historical
time capsule.
Yeah, because that's how I think about it. Because, someone had asked me in an interview several months ago, how do I feel about the book considering everything that's happened? And I'm just like, I still like my book. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you?
It's like, I hate it now. Thanks for asking.
I was like, it would still be it's still relevant. It's just one of those interesting. It is a time capsule. It's a time capsule, and so I think it just required a reframe. But as far as I'm concerned, this book is always going to capture the spirit of the height of social media age college experience, right? Like it's going to capture that in a way that very few other books do, because they also weren't they're either going to be like looking back now. There are very few that like were written during the height of that moment, like really kind of it's almost a like, I come from academia, but in some ways it's like a digital ethnography. It's kind of like an exploration of like what the sorry it's yeah like in some ways it's kind of like that. So I think if you can treat the text like that and not be upset that it doesn't reflect what's happening right this second in social media, then it's still really good.
I mean, I will argue that it's not even that if you could disregard it. I think it's going into it and understanding that we, as a people, as a culture, we exist in a world where you are online, and the college experience that even I had, and I like, we had Facebook and we had, Instagram, like those things were still around. But when I started my college experience in 2012, it is not the experience that kids are having now in 2025,
Right.
and like the fact that Sid finds her roommate online, it's like, yeah, that was a thing that happened. And even though it's not Twitter, like there's still social media that's going on. There's still TikTok, there is still
Mhm.
Instagram. And honestly, I'm probably going to be aging myself, and I'm not even that old. But when I was talking to a group of youngins, right? And when I realized that like they don't give out numbers anymore, like they share Instagram profiles and they DM on Instagram. Like if you get someone's actual phone number, that is a level like of intimacy and relationship that is just like everybody doesn't have. And it's just
Mhm.
like, wow, that's crazy. But there are rules and things that that they navigate through. And if you read the book, Sid also understands that there are rules and things that she has to respect while navigating. She breaks a couple of them, not gonna lie,
Mhm.
but that's her being messy and awkward and
Mhm.
18 and making dumb decisions.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think what you captured is an authentic teenage experience, even if the technology itself isn't exactly the same. But the thing is, people still do blogs. People are
Mhm.
still doing, you know, Substack, Twitter, whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, there's still people on X. I don't know why you're there, but if there's still people there.
Mhm.
Threads exists. It's a different
Mhm.
name, same kind of concept.
Mhm.
So I think what you captured is an experience, is a moment, is a growth, is something that is in and of itself like a timeless experience and is nostalgic for people who are no longer in that moment. But I think it's also very eye opening for any young adult teenagers who are reading it and are like, this is a very big and new experience that's looming on the horizon. This is
Mhm.
kind of what it's like. And I think that's
Mhm.
why I love your book so much. It's just like, thank you for not shying away from the awkward and the messy and the girl, put your phone down. Oh my God. How are you? Please don't talk to this man like this. Are you serious? Jesus. Sid, please, you need a friend. God.
But she has several that she just doesn't listen to. Like I think that's also part of, like she's got three people at least in her ear regularly. So she's got Zion, she's got Angie, her buddy that she meets at school, and she's
Yeah.
got her sister. And all of them are telling her to chill, and she will not. Like
She,
she just won't. It's one of those things where I really appreciate when people put Love in 280 characters or less alongside Lara Jean Song Covey in To All the Boys, because the thing about the two of them that's very very similar is that you look at Lara Jean and you think, oh, she's just like really quiet and she's introverted, and she's not messy or whatever. Like Lara Jean is the drama. Lara Jean, the things that she's thinking in her head, her fantasy world actually is the drama. And so like that is Sid. Sid and the way that she's like thinking about how to behave in these situations, that is the drama. And like you think
she is the
because
problem.
she is the problem, and you think because she's not like out wilding in the streets or whatever, that she can't be the problem. She's also the problem in her room. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah, she is. She is. She's actually 100% the problem all the time. And it's just like, it's one of those things where I feel like you balance the anxiety and the eye roll with like you really just want Sid to get it together. Like she is very much a lovable protagonist, but as someone with a fully developed frontal lobe, I was like, girl, if you do not get yourself together, I need you to take 3 seconds, just all of 3 seconds to think about what you're doing right now. And she just won't do it. She just
she
will not.
It's one of those interesting moments. I have lots of adult friends with fully developed frontal lobes who were Black girls in college. And a lot of them read the book and came back to me. And one person, I think, actually said it perfectly. And she said, I loved this book. And Sid made me cringe because that she is an unhealed version of who I was.
Ooh.
Right. And I was like, yeah, Sid is hard to read. I think if you did not heal some of the things that you might have gone through as a young person. I think if you're an adult and you're good now, like Sid can be kind of hard to read because she kind of triggers some stuff, if you didn't get a chance to work through some things you might have experienced as a
Yeah, I will say this. If you're healed, the book feels very nostalgic. I can see how it could be very triggering if you're not. And if you are triggered by this book and you're grown, you should probably seek therapy. To be honest. To be honest, I'm not judging you. I'm just, yeah. But that being said, right? We've talked about kind of how this book has come about. Did you have a favorite part of the process in creating 280 character love and 280 characters or less?
So the favorite part of I would say most of the time my favorite part of the process is the initial drafting experience because this book when I put it together because it is an epistolary and so it's lots of small almost vignettes kind of strung together. My favorite part was writing all of that stuff initially and then kind of moving it around and figuring out how it went because it actually the first draft of it went really smoothly and I kind of knocked it out pretty quickly I think
Oh,
compared
I
to a
love
lot.
that for you.
Yeah, it was great. I had gotten that summer, I had just decided to buy Scrivener. I thought that I was going to use it for my dissertation and, like I wanted to try it out. And then I hadn't written a novel in a while. And I've been I think most writers have a form that they naturally gravitate to, whether it's the novel or the short story or the poem. I think a lot of people kind of their first form is something short like poetry.
Hmm.
I legitimately wrote novels like from a young age. Like my first novel I wrote when I was like 10. And so I went into this process, I hadn't written something long form in a long time and I wanted to try it out. And because I could move things around with Scrivener and I could jump so easily the short pieces because I could see every individual short piece that I was writing all at once on the side. It just felt like a natural way to also explore the software and try to figure out how to use the software as well. So I had a lot of fun writing the initial or the OG draft of 280 because I was also playing with this digital software. So there's also that element of it as well. And figuring out I think in that process, what were the things that I had a thought well after the fact about?
Mm.
Like something, so I won't say too much, so it won't be too much of a spoiler for you, but there is an incident that Sid experiences it's not even at her campus. There's something that happens that she is reacting to and it has a ripple effect on her campus. It does actually have a personal significance to her and things like that. So, you know, I things like that happened very frequently on the PWI
Mhm.
campuses that I was at. Even well into when I was teaching, things would happen. And I realized that there's not good support for students when these things do occur. A lot of times they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, counseling services is on call. You can like call this number and it'll be for like a week or something. Like if you have, you can go in and talk to a counselor on call." But I think what I realized in writing and drafting was that the reactions that students have to these really big events that happen on campus that are disruptive to their learning, that are disruptive to their lives on campus, is that actually if we need institutional support and systemic change. Like that's actually what we need. And so in some ways Sid's reaction to it is a demonstration of a lack of support. Is like a lack of how do we help these students when these things occur. And so I also kind of wanted to write to that because college is in a lot of ways great, and also you're having to handle big stuff by yourself for the first time, which is also why I was really, interested in college. I think college is such a beautiful coming of age like place to do coming of age, because it's not true for everyone, but for a lot of people that 18-year-old college really is the first time that you, not that you're making decisions for yourself, because you are making decisions for yourself prior to that, but it's the first time that you get to make them, and the consequences are totally yours, right? Like if you
Yeah.
decide that, yeah, like if you decide that you're going to, stay up till 2 a.m. And play video games or whatever, and you have a paper due, and then you end up failing the class, and then you have to take that class over. But your mom says, "Hey, I'm not paying for you to take that summer class." That's suddenly your problem. That's
Yep.
nobody else's problem, right? Like that's nobody else's issue. And so I think college is the first time you really get a taste of not just making the decisions and then having the agency to go and do whatever you want with whoever you want, to the extent to which you have the access or the funds or whatever to do the thing. You also are dealing with the fallout. You're dealing with the consequences of whatever the choice was that you made for the first time on your own as well. Because I mean, like, no one's professor is going to take you seriously if you get mommy to call up to the school, because like no one, yeah, like no one's
No.
doing that. So, you know.
It's definitely the training wheels for adulthood. And
Mhm.
I will definitely say that, like, yeah, you very much learn that you have to be accountable for yourself because, like, if you miss that class and there was a pop quiz, your professor is not obligated to give you another chance. There is no child left behind. There is no I have to help you make it up or give you another chance or whatever. And some professors are kind. Some professors will work
Mhm.
with you. I would even argue that most professors will work with you,
Mhm.
but you are going to have that one hard ass who's going to be like, nope, these are the rules. You broke the
Mhm.
rules. You have to go. Like one of my kind of like serious, like, oh, there is no, like, they are the law, at least in this room to a certain extent, was when I was a freshman and I was in an English class, and it was a very old school lady, and she was just like, no phones. Like, I don't want to see them
Mhm.
on your desk. I don't want to hear them. If your phone goes off while you're in class, you have to go. Like, even if it's not your fault, like if I hear it, if I see it, you have to go. And one of the girls, she got a phone call and she answered it because she was like, well, my mom is in the hospital. And the teacher was like, I understand. You need to go outside, take your phone call, and you can come back next week when we have class. But
Mhm.
you're not coming back in here. And she was like, but my mom is in the hospital. She's like, I understand. Go take care of that. I'm not saying don't answer the phone call. I'm saying that
Mhm.
you are not going to stay in here in my
Mhm.
class and take the phone call, right?
Mhm.
And it just kind of hit that it was just like, that's a big decision that you kind of have to make. Now, whether or not her mom was really in the hospital or not, I don't know. She could have just
Mhm.
been trying not to get kicked out of class because we were taking a test that day, whatever.
Mhm.
But it is definitely one of those things where it's just like you have to make a choice. Are you going to take this phone call? Are you going
Mhm.
to push these boundaries, or are you going to put it off for the 50 minutes that you have to sit here and
Mhm.
then worry about it later? And it seems like such a small thing in the scheme of things, but it's just like, okay, you get put out of class once, it's not a big deal, but you get put out of class two, three, four, 5 times. And
Mhm.
now it's just like, oh, now you have a problem. Now you're missing
Mhm.
homework. Now you're missing assignments. Now you're missing tests. Now you're missing information. And there are some things that you can't recover from.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that being said, I feel like I could talk to you forever. And there's so
Mhm.
many more things that I wanna ask you about, but I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible so this episode doesn't get too long. But I want to know, like, what is coming up next for you? Are there any projects that you can share that if people get into 280 characters or less, they can be like, okay, I'm looking forward to the next thing Ravynn K. Stringfield puts out into the world.
Oh, man, I wish I had something like very solid and tangible that I could offer. Like I know the next book is coming out. I'm in a spot where I've got a lot of irons in the fire and nothing is completely solidified yet. So I actually just don't want to jinx anything.
I understand.
Yeah, before it comes out. But I'm hopeful that if you liked 280, that there will be something in that world, in that vein coming. So that's what I will say about that. And then I will also say that if you liked my debut Love Requires Chocolate, which is so 280 is much more coming of age than it is romance. And then Love Requires Chocolate is way more romance than it is coming of age, but it is still a pretty significant coming of age story, I would say. But if you like the kind of fluffiness of that particular romance, the first one, Love Requires Chocolate, I do hope to have something closer to that also coming soon. And then I something that I will talk about that is I think further down the line, so nothing that I would expect from me in the next like 2-ish years, but I do hope to make a pivot back into speculative at some point.
Hey.
So yes, so that's where I came up. I came up in fantasy. I came up in speculative work. And that was what made me a reader. Fantasy books
Hmm.
made me a reader. I also like I'm also it's one of those, if you look at pictures of me holding stacks of books like in Borders or wherever I was when I was a teenager, the stack of books would
Borders.
be yes, yes, we had a Borders and we didn't have the Barnes and Nobles was further away. So there was for a little while a Borders in the mall that was closest to my house, and it was still in a different city. So like I don't have a bookstore in my hometown. You have to go to a different city to get books that are not at like a Walmart or something like that.
I
So
got you.
yeah. So when you look at the stacks of books, it'll be like Princess Diaries, three Sarah Dessen books, Aragon, like so like whatever the latest Pendragon drop was, I was like really into Pendragon for a while. Maximum right, like it'll be like princess, like high fantasy. Like that was very much my brand as a teenager. So I hope to make a shift into speculative. I will say that the thing I'm working on right now is actually kind of scared of it. Like it's like I don't like if you read anything that I've written to this point that is published and you talk to me about the concept for this book, I know people are like this is a jump scare. Like this
I love it though, because I live in the world of fantasy and I'm just always like, give me more black fantasy. I want more black fantasy. So I'm here for it. And the thing is, you have the skill, and I think that'll translate into any genre that you take on. So I'm
oh,
excited for it. Like, I am thrilled. I can't wait to
thank
get my
you.
hands on it.
I appreciate that. I will have to seek you out because I'm getting to a point where like the manuscript is getting pretty chunky. So I need to start letting people look at it because
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm getting to a point where like if I keep writing without much more vision for structure, which I do have,
Mm,
but like it's still very loosey goosey. I think I need someone else to help me figure out where the boundaries are on some of this stuff. So
I
I
got
think
you.
it's getting time. It's getting time. But like that book, I can't imagine that book coming out for several more years, but like I'm looking forward to it. And it might be adult also, which is the other thing. Like I think it may not be YA. So
I'm happy right now. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I Okay, so if you guys are listening to this, I need you guys to understand that there are very few people in the writing spaces where I'm like, I think that they have the ability to jump genres, and I
oh,
will be excited about anything that they write. Y'all know that I love Tatiana Obeat down. Like, I read everything that she writes. I love her so much. Y'all know that La Purvis is that. Y'all know I love Kimberly Lemming. And honestly, Raven, I see you being on that list. Like, I would
oh, thank
absolutely
you.
love to read a fantasy, like to be
Oh,
immersed in a world that you create. Because, like I said, the skill is there and it's so apparent in 280. It's just like I don't think I can articulate it. It's just like I've read so many books where they're on a college campus and the college campus feels like it's just there to be an excuse to give them freedom, to give an excuse for them to not have parents or supervision or anything like that. And the consequences of their actions are not lasting. It's just, they're there, and I feel like, CVU was like really, it was more than just a background. It was a legitimate
mhm,
setting, and the characters felt like they had their own lives, even the ones who weren't at school. Like, her best friend wasn't there, and it's just like still felt like through blog posts and text messages, like he had his own life going on. Like
mhm,
he cared about Sid and they were maintaining their friendship. But it was
mhm,
also like he had other things that he was doing. He had his own interests, and you kind of felt that natural drift that happens when it's just like I'm over
mhm,
here and you're over there. And it's like we care about each other. There's still a bridge here, but we are now moving in different directions where we had always been tied at the hip. And the way that you incorporated so much depth to these characters in their worlds to the point where it's like it felt like it could be real. It felt like they could be on someone's college campus somewhere, and these are things that they are really dealing with. I feel like being able to do that, whether it is in romance, whether it's in fantasy, whether it's in thriller, whether it's in whatever genre you want to go into, I think you have that skill and that's going to come
mhm.
through regardless, And I think getting the structure and the plot down of fantasy, I mean, like if that's all you have to navigate, I think you're ahead of the game. I
Oh,
think you're ahead of the game,
thank you.
you
I,
know?
I I really, really appreciate that. That means a lot to me because I do know that genre hopping is people do it and it's a lot harder than I think, folks really want to give it credit to. I think we think that like writing is writing. It's really not. Like I think the fantasy girls really have something different going on in their brains. Like I really just don't. And so, I appreciate especially you as someone that comes from fantasy to be like I could see you doing this. Like that means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to say this as a disclaimer because if y'all listen to the podcast, y'all know who I am, and I am the problem. I don't think everyone can genre hop. I think there are some authors who are genre hopping who should not be genre hopping, and I'm going to leave it at that. But I do think that if Ravynn K. Stringfield decides to genre hop, that you should genre hop with her. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it there. We are going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. So, Raven, I have two questions that I ask everyone who comes onto the podcast. The first one is if you could choose what lasting effect your work will leave on people, what would it be?
If I could choose, I would say that I hope that my books give you permission or like help you find the strength to be exactly who you are in all of your bigness and all of your largeness and all of your expansiveness. I hope that my books provide you with a way to understand that you do not have to make yourself small. And I should be clear, this is two Black girls. For Black girls who have had
Hmm.
to make themselves small, I hope you come to my books and give yourself permission to spread out.
Amen. Amen. And y'all know I second that 100,000% because that is why I say I write books about Black girls who aren't all that nice, because I want to write books that give you permission to be all the things, feel all the things, experience all the things without worrying about how other people are going to perceive you. And you can be angry without being the angry Black woman.
Right.
But that being said, last question is, what writing advice would you give to any new authors just now starting out on their writing journey?
This is both writing advice and practical logistical business advice, but I think you probably should kind of early on figure out what it is your goals are with your writing, who you want your audiences to be, where you want your books to go. There's a lot to be said for kind of figuring it out as you go along, and I think you need to do that. I think you always need to just be writing, but I do think at a certain point, if you want this to be something that you do somewhat professionally, you can choose the level of professional that you'd like to do this at. But I do think that at the point where you start considering what this might look like for you professionally, there is going to have to be a moment where you start treating your work as business. And that requires a different skill set than simply writing and enjoying the craft and the artistry of writing. Now, the piece that's actual writing advice is once you've kind of figured out where your business head is at, because like I will also say, like, not everyone that writes is particularly business savvy. That's why we got agents. That's why, like, that's why we do some of this stuff, right? Once you figure out what your business side look like and what you're trying to do with the business of it, do everything you can to protect what you love about the craft, what you love about writing and about storytelling, because there will be moments where you're having to make business decisions about your work that do not necessarily align with what you are committed to doing with your art and as an artist. And you have to be able to say, I don't want to do that because it doesn't align, or, I do want to do this because it does align. And you have to start making some strategy decisions with your art and what your commitment to your art is in mind. So it requires a little bit of self-reflection about yourself as an artist and yourself as a business entity. And I'm telling you this because I did not do a lot of that heavy lifting until I was already in it. I already had an agent. I was already in deals and stuff like that. And then I was having to try to make decisions that aligned with my values after I had already kind of like stumbled into stuff, right? And it's much harder to make good decisions for yourself when you have a bunch of constraints and you got contracts and stuff than it is to have that self-awareness and that self-recognition before you go into things and before you even pick projects and things like that. So I'm asking or hoping that you do some of that self-reflective work about yourself as an artist and what kind of art you're trying to make and the kind of impact that you're going to have, and figure out how that's going to mesh with the business side. And a good agent will kind of help you also navigate that as well if you decide that you want to go into traditional publishing. And if not, having a solid group of peers is always going to be something that I recommend to kind of help you workshop and navigate that landscape as well.
Absolutely. And I will second that as an indie author. Like, you absolutely have to have boundaries. Like, you have to know where it is that your art is and what you're writing for yourself, and then what it is that you're marketing and what you're providing for the people. Those are usually two completely different things. And, there's always the old adage, the first draft is for you, the second draft is for everyone else. And just kind of keeping that in mind, because it doesn't matter how you get your book out in the world. If you decide that this book is no longer a personal project that's going to live on your computer just for you and your eyes only and maybe your friends, once you decide to be a professional, you do have to start thinking, like Ravynn said, you do have to start thinking like a business. You do have to start really being mindful of the intersection between your art and your business and your money, because you got to figure that out if you're going to be successful. But that being said, Ravynn, I'm so glad that you came on the podcast. If you could please let the people know where to find you, I will go ahead and wrap us up.
All right, so you can find me at my website, www.ravynkstringfield.com. You can find me on Instagram or Threads at Ravynn Camilla, on Blue Sky at ravyncamillabluesky.com, or whatever the end of Blue Sky is. And then you can also find me on TikTok, much less frequently, at Ravynn Stringfield.
All right. And you guys know that I will have her website linked down below or in the show notes, depending on how you are getting this. And that is it for this episode of the Written in Melanin podcast, you guys. If you'd like to support this podcast, then please share it with someone you think may enjoy it. Join our membership on the Melanin Library website. Grab a copy of my books from my website, cmlockhart.com, or donate to the podcast so that we can continue making content for you guys. There are links in the show notes / description box for everything. And thank you guys again so much for listening. Until next time, I hope all your books are full of melanin.